So, welcome to the Life Career Roadmap, episode number 6 with my special guest, Arunima Nair.
Hello, Cema. Nice to be
Wow.
here.
Did I say your name right every time I
You did good.
no, say your name so people can understand pretty well?
It's
Arunima
Arunima
Nair.
Nair.
Arunima Nair.
Yes.
That's your name. Well done. So, do you have that feature on LinkedIn that you can teach people your name?
Oh, no, I don't. I wasn't aware that there was a feature
Yes,
like
I think probably when you came to my workshops a while ago, we didn't have this feature. So I can teach you after we finish here
that.
how
Yes, I
you
look
can
forward to
teach
it.
people your name, Arunima Nair. And especially because your last name, it's a first name in Portuguese and you have a different tone for the name. Like, yeah.
Yes. That's
So,
so interesting, isn't it?
yes. So, talking about names, Arunima, tell me, how many people have trouble saying your name?
Oh, a lot of people have trouble saying my name. It's a bit of a mouthful, Arunima. So yes, I've noticed that people here do struggle with my name. In
Yes.
fact, I have a funny story associated with this. Can I tell you?
Yes, of course. Well, I'm very curious to know about
So when I first came here, I started working as a care worker in aged care, and I introduced myself, and a lot of the residents really struggled with my name. So I was like, "Oh, what can I do to, make it easier?" So I told them that my name was Roo, like the kangaroo. So after coming to Australia, Arunima has kind of become Roo,
True.
like the kangaroo.
So probably the residents would like find a little bit funny, but much easier for them to
Oh,
pronounce it.
yeah, yeah. It was instant recall, But the only problem was some of them then started calling me kangaroo, which was problematic.
You could jump a little bit just to, but what a funny story. So, uh, and is this rule piece of your name is some other way people call you back home or a nickname or something that you just came up to help
No,
people?
actually, at home, everyone calls me Aru.
A rule.
And my sister-in-law actually used to call me Ru. So it's actually a name that I was used to responding to. So it's not like I've completely changed my name or anything. It's a shortening that I'm really fond of. So I'm quite happy to have people call me Ru.
Oh, yes. So, Arunima, let's go back to the point about your career. So,
Yes.
tell us a little bit more about what do you do and how you chose to do what you do. I know you have done psychology, but you
Yeah.
haven't followed psychology as to be a clinician, right?
No.
So, explain to us because there is a bit of a difference between probably psychology in India, where you come from,
Oh, yes.
and here in Australia.
Yes. So I did my bachelor's in psychology. And then from there, I kind of moved into, I did my master's in social work. So primarily, if you look at my main qualifications and my work experience, I've worked as a social worker back in India. And do you want me to connect it with what I'm doing here?
Yes, yes, because it's very interesting because many newcomers, when they come to Australia, they bring their qualifications, but sometimes they don't know how their qualification would fit in Australia,
Yes,
and they
yes,
think it's the same way back home. So
yes.
I look at your qualification, is psychology, and then
Mm.
you have English literature, and also office
Social work.
management. So
Yes,
explain to
that
us.
was my bachelor's. Yes, that was my bachelor's.
So
Office
how
management comes in handy in any job. I'm very grateful
That's,
to say that.
that's right. But that's something that we don't see here in Australia, qualifications
Yes,
like this, right?
yes,
So this is
yes,
specifically where you come from. And then you move to social work.
yes,
Is that you did your master's degree in social work,
yes.
right? So how all this journey happened?
So I think psychology happened because I was just genuinely like I have a lot of people who studied psychology in my family. In fact, my maternal aunt was at the head of the department in one of the universities in India. So psychology was something, the books used to lie around, and she would give us questionnaires, and we used to help her with, preparing for her classes sometimes. So I just had this very early on, I got introduced to psychology as a subject, and I loved it. I loved it. Just the thought of being able to delve into the human mind and understand its workings and its motivations and how we make meaning out of life was fascinating for me. So once I finished my high school, it was very clear that I would want to go into this line. I also had a great interest in English literature, loved the language. So that was also a no-brainer. I just got into it for the love of it. And I must say, I really enjoyed my graduation because the courses, the subjects were so interesting. And, I really had an amazing time studying them. And then when I started thinking about what I wanted to do next, a very interesting incident actually happened that kind of changed my trajectory, because I did want to go on and do my master's in psychology. But then at that time, there was a very severe cyclone that had hit a neighboring state in India. And it was devastating. Lots of people lost their lives. Property was lost. Habitation was lost. It was really, really devastating. And at that time, one of my seniors had joined this course in social work, which was in the state, in the city of Bombay, Mumbai right now, that's what they call it. And they had gone, as the students had gone to do relief and rescue work in this cyclone hit area. And on the way back, they stopped at our station, which was, the city that I was located in. And a bunch of us went to meet this particular senior. And we asked them, what did you do? Like, what was, as a student, what did you go there and do? And they had these amazing stories of the work they did with the people who were, affected by the cyclone, and how they were helped out in relief efforts and rescue efforts, how they helped in data collection, and how their contribution was not only to the immediate disaster, but also in terms of collecting data for the long-term planning of to rebuild and to kind of come back to normal. So that was the restoration work that had to happen after a disaster like that. So I remember listening to this, and it was just like a clarion call in my head, where I was like, this is it. This is what I wanted to do. And so after I finished my graduation, my bachelor's, I applied to this particular institute, which is the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai. And that was it. I mean, that was the sort of the course that I took, and that's how where I should have been doing psychology. I just felt social work had this, like in India, it's very, you're hands-on, you're in the community, you're working with people. And I really liked that, just the way she described it. It just really called to me. So I went that way, and that's how I ended up doing my master's in social work.
So what a career discovery, huh? So you never...
You don't know where motivation will strike.
That's right. You had something inside of you that was there, ticking, but you could not define until the point when you heard and you saw.
Yes. I knew I wanted to work with people. I knew I wanted to work with people. I knew I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And in psychology, you do it more on a individual to individual kind of basis, unless of course you're working in like a group therapy setting. Whereas in social work, you can have like a broader impact. So that was what kind of motivated me. And then I did this. So the psychology didn't get really left behind, because I specialized in family and child welfare. And so psychology was a huge part of what we were learning. And because they taught us counseling, and they taught us use of different therapies like art therapy, play therapy. So all of that kind of tied in with what I learned in psychology. So it wasn't something that I left behind. I just used those skills in a different way.
Yeah, so because seeing your profile when you came to work with us, you had also experience in counseling, right?
Yes.
And teaching. So tell us more about this area of your life that you had experience with counseling and also teaching.
So actually, within social work in India, especially if you they were there, if you either work in mental health, social work that specializes in working with mental health or with families and children, there is an element of counseling that comes in. So I worked extensively in with children in institutional care. So some of my like one of the first organizations I worked for was an organization that they provided residential, vocational, and mental health and physical care for girls who are rescued from human trafficking. So basically, like the sex trade. And so there was a huge element of doing counseling and helping them through the process of, and then if they were like serious issues, obviously you refer them to go and seek like a professional help, psychologist, psychiatrist, but which, we don't have authorization to provide that level of care. But a lot of the work that I had to do was like individual counseling with them. We did group counseling sessions, just to sort of I know you can't make sense of that experience, but just to sort of help them to move ahead with life. So, but later on, I moved into, I got into school counseling, like I got into schools, like the educational system. So I did a lot of counseling with students within the school system, which was a little different. So it's like young children to adolescents, that age group. And what was the other thing? Teaching, I think, came because I got into schools. So because because I was like the school counselor and social worker, they wanted us to do things like trainings in coping with stress, in coping in sex education. So that kind of developed from and life skills. So the teaching element was that's what I did.
Okay, so what an experience, huh?
It's been a wonderful journey, Cema.
Yeah, it's right. I can see. I am so fascinated because I'm from this same field, like working with people and helping people. So it's so
Yes.
wonderful when you see someone moving forward and being able to really achieve what they want to achieve, but for some reason they were just behind, right?
Yes.
And how about English? Like we have the English side inside of
I honestly, the English side, I have not really worked in anything to do with English, but I did. The English skills came in handy because there was a lot of report writing. There was a lot of, So as part of for around around 8 to 10 years, I worked at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I started off like as a program assistant and I made it up to like a program coordinator. And what I did over there was I was part of many projects which involved a lot of reporting, writing project proposals. We did a lot. We created a lot of training material. There are 2 training manuals that I was a co-author to, which are still in use in India right now. So all of that required a lot of the language then had to come in there. And that's where I think all my, whatever I learned in English literature and English kind of got channelized into all of that.
Yes, and also you guys in India, you have English as a second language, right? So it's more like you refining.
So English was the first language because I studied in, so in India you have like English medium and then you can have like a Hindi medium or the local language. You can go and study in those schools too, in which case then English might be a second language, but for me English was a first language.
That's so handy. So many people don't know this. Sorry.
Yeah.
So for letting us know. And regarding you coming to Australia and working in your field, first, let's come to the beginning that I didn't ask you. You are from India, but which part of India are you from?
I'm from the south of India.
South of India. And what's the name
State
of the
called
place?
Kerala.
Say again.
It's a state called Kerala.
Kerala. Okay. Oh, it's because I
It's
didn't get
known
it.
as God's own land.
Uh,
Additional information.
it's a blessed land.
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place.
Okay. So, and then when was the decision that you realized that you had inside of your heart or your mind about migrating? So, do you remember specifically when you said to yourself, I want to migrate or I want to live in a different place?
So, my partner used to be in the armed forces in India.
Mhm.
And so in the Navy specifically. So what happened was we were used to a very nomadic life. We traveled a lot. And we've traveled and lived in different parts of India because, you know, in the armed forces, they move you about. So we moved a fair bit. What happened when he retired was that, you know, there was no need to stay in the country anymore. And I did have a lot of family here, and they had kind of mentioned that, you know, my skills were something that could translate to work over here. So at that point, I think I just thought, well, why not? You know, we've seen India. Now let's go see the world and see what the world has to
What's the
offer.
neighborhood around?
Yeah. Let's go to the other end of the world and check that place out for a little while. So that was basically why I made the decision that, you know, let me in. And I started the process and I applied for a skilled visa so that I could come in with a PR. So that was I figured if I get it, great. If I don't get it, I'm still okay here, not an issue. That way I was very lucky that I don't think it was like an imperative for me to move. It was a choice. It was an adventure that I was setting out on. So yeah, and then I applied for the pro. And I think it took around 3 to 4 years before the whole thing kind of got done. And yeah, and then in 2018 I got my visa. So that was the first time I came to Australia.
Yes. And in this case, did you have, as you applied for a skilled visa, did you have to do the assessment of your qualification before you?
Yes, that's the first step.
Yes.
That's the first step. So my qualifications, because I'm professionally a social worker, had to be they had to be assessed by the Australian Association of Social Work. It's a very rigorous process. They want to have letters from literally every person you've ever worked with, and it was a huge challenge for me because some of the people were dead, and I was like, how am I going to get letters from these people? So I had to literally track down the second in command was someone who would take it. And it had been a few years. So, tracking down information is difficult. But yeah, touch wood, I had like the people who I did approach, they were very kind. And they remembered me and they were able to give me the letters that I required. And that was really good.
Okay. So when coming to Australia after these 4 years that your process was just there, did you plan during these 4 years or you just say whatever comes, whatever?
Yeah, no, it was totally, let me see if it happens because I'm that kind of person. So I'm like, I'll do something and I'll do my best towards it, but I don't really put pressure on the outcome because I'm like, what has to be will be. You can do your best, but it needn't necessarily work out for you. I would have liked for it to work out. So I prayed for that. But if it hadn't worked out, then I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I didn't really put all my eggs into the I'm moving to Australia basket.
Okay, so you had your life going normal and
Yes.
it
Yes.
happens, I will see how it goes. So
Yes.
did you come here to visit Australia before you moved definitely to Australia?
So the first time I came to Australia was in 2018 after I got my PR. And they gave me a month and they said within a month's time, you need to enter once to kind of activate PR. So that's how I ended up making and I came here for a month and I stayed here with my my brother and his family. Yeah, and that was the first time I came really. I just fell in love with the place. It's just what's not to love. It's a beautiful place.
It's beautiful place.
And I just remember getting out of the airport and I just the plants just seemed so different, you know. It felt like I was on like this alien land. And I just loved it. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to really, really like this place. And it was just an instant. I felt good about this place. And I was like, okay, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay if we came here and we stayed.
So you went back to then to India, and for the second time you came to live in Australia. So
yes,
how long lasted the honeymoon that you had for the first time when you came? Like since the first time you went back, the honeymoon was inside of your head. Oh, everything will be fine because the place is beautiful, everything works. And then you arrived to live in Australia. What was the reality after that whole?
It was completely different.
Oh,
it was completely different because when I came in the first time, I think I came in with the mindset of a tourist that I'm going to be here for a month. I'm going to see all these really nice things. I'm going to eat good food and I'm going to go back home, you know. When I came back in 2019 to live was when I realized, oh my God, this is for keeps. And, you know, it was the difference between, like you said, the honeymoon and the marriage. You know?
Yes. The real marriage now.
The marriage takes hard work.
The papers.
It takes commitment and hard work. So I would say it was a rocky start, but yes, it was a huge shock for me. There were
main shocks for you.
Pardon?
What were the main shocks for you, Daddy?
Oh, so the main shocks were, so for instance, I think I really struggled with the notion of, in some ways, how lonely it is when you first come in. I had family, but they all worked and they were all very busy, and they're amazing people and they were tremendously supportive through the process. But back home in India, I also had like this community network. I had a friend circle that was very vibrant and a huge part of my life. And then when I came here, I was like that I don't have friends, and it was very difficult making friends. I realized, you know, when you move to a new place and you're like 40, everyone's already settled into their friend groups. They really don't want this, you know, Johnny come lately new person. I don't know who this person is. Why should I move out of my comfort zone and be friends with someone who's completely, you know, completely new? So people don't really, at that age, they don't really sort of make way for you. And one thing that I remember finding very strange, and I remember discussing it with people also, was like, Australians are really, really friendly. So when you meet them and you talk to them, they're amazing. You have this fantastic conversation. And I'm like, oh, this person's really nice. I'm going to be friends with this person. And then you meet them 2 days later and they look through you. It's just, even our greetings are so, it's like in India, you go in and you'll be like, you know, you don't really have a conversation. Whereas in Australia, you're like, hi, how you doing? I'm doing good. How are you doing? You're doing good. And that whole, you know, that back and forth is like one hello, which in India will be like one nod in your head and you're done, right?
Oh my goodness, so different, huh?
Yeah. So it was interesting. It took adjusting and it took a lot of time, but it's been 4 years since I've come, and I can say now that I have you know, a beautiful bunch of friends, and an international group of friends, like people from all over the place, Australians and, you know, Sri Lankans and people from all sorts of other countries. So it's taken time, but you know, you eventually come to a point where this place feels like home, you know.
That's right. So I remember when you came to the program and I was going through your application and reading your resume and interviewing you, right?
Yes.
And asking what are your plans, what are your goals for the future. And you said you just want to work with the community, and I want to be part of the community.
Yes.
And that was something that I said, well, that's the real thing for us when you move to a new country, is be part of the community, because
Yeah.
we don't realize that where we come from, we are part of that community, but we probably don't value as much because it's always done. It's so natural for us. But when you have to build that community around you, and you also put yourself inside of their community, it's another extra level of work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we take for granted the communities we come from, especially if you come from like communal societies. Like India is a very communal society. If you're living in an apartment block, you'll know your neighbors. They'll come for your birthday party. You'll invite them for your child's wedding. Those kind of things will happen. And you build these, and those networks are vast and they're very intricate. They're very, very rich kind of sources of support and connection for people. When you come here, you have none of that. So it's a shocking experience, and I think we do take for granted how easily we had access to it back in our home countries, because you're just born into the system.
Yes.
You're born into it, you grow up, so it's effortless. Whereas here you're starting from scratch, and you're literally trying to make headway into an already established system, which doesn't really need you. The system is fine on its own. It's happy, it's managing, it's a thriving system. They don't really need you to be in there. And then how do you bring value to it? And how do you make a space and a niche for yourself where you can fit in?
The contribution that you bring.
Yes.
People see you
Yes.
as a contributor.
Exactly.
Awesome. Because you had many phases here in Australia when newcomers were seen as, oh, they're stealing my jobs, right? They are coming and stealing the jobs, or taking our house, or taking everything. And of course, it's a question of wrong information from both sides. And as we are here, and as newcomers, we come because we understand we are able to contribute.
Yes.
But how you can do that, right? So it's a little bit of science, as
it's also a lot of trial and error.
but the science that I say is that your own science, the introspective science,
yes.
right?
Yes.
That you need to investigate
yes.
deep inside of you, what motivates you to be where you are, and going through all these roadblocks to be what, to see what, to have what. So, and it's not just the point of achieving that, is what comes after you achieve what you want, how your life will be.
Very true. I agree with you.
Coming in migrate is the easiest part, let's say this way, but what comes after?
Oh my God. I think that's the greater challenge, because and that's the thing that can make a difference between you actually having a good life, or you just being pretty isolated. And sometimes I think people get into cliques. They get together with people of their own kind of country or religion, or just their little group, and then they don't sort of venture outside and explore the variety and the vibrance that is a part of like living in a country like this. I mean, it's just amazing the kind of people. There's so many different people from different parts of the world, so much different food to eat. It's lovely. I mean, I find it super exciting. I remember when I'd initially come, the thing that used to give me the absolute kick, because I didn't have a car at that time in the initial 1 year that I was here. So I was using a lot of local transport, and where that was not possible, I was using the Ubers and the Olas and the Didis. And I remember I just used to love striking up conversations with people and asking them, like, where did you come from, and what's your story? And everyone had like a different story, and there were so many interesting conversations that I had with people. It was fascinating. Like, I remember I met this one gentleman who had been here for a very long time. I think he was here for like 60 years or something. And he told me the whole history of the area that I was staying in. He said, these used to be vegetable fields. They used to grow potatoes here. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even imagine it. He said, yeah, all over here. And we, as kids, we used to walk by this when I was like, oh my God, I would have never thought that.
Sorry,
and there was this other gentleman, I remember he was can't remember, was he from Ghana or something? And he told me this whole story about how he had been kidnapped and he'd been shot at.
Mm.
And I was like, what? He had this story, and it was like listening to like an action thriller or something. That was the most exciting Uber ride I'd ever been on. So because of his story, I was like, "You gotta be kidding me." He's like, "Yeah, I'll show you my gunshot wound." I was like, "Okay."
Goodness. Yeah.
But you
Well,
need to talk to people.
the
Everyone has such interesting stories.
yeah, the Uber drivers, they have very good
Mm.
conversations, and they bring lots of different stories that you never
Yes,
imagine. And the
yes.
majority of them, they are highly skilled.
Oh, yes. A lot of them were like a significant portion of them were studying, and they were using Uber driving as, something to earn some money on the side. There were others who had come much like me, who, had come in with skills, had qualifications, couldn't find work. So they were trying to, so I actually, every such person, I recommended them to the Kaleidoscope program. I used to be like, you need to go and check this out.
So let's go then to this conversation. So coming to Australia with high qualifications or high qualified with pretty wonderful English that you have, was easy for you to find a job in your field, Arunima?
It was impossible for me to find a job in my field. It was really impossible. So, like I said, when I came here, I came with a significant amount of experience. I had a certain amount of seniority and a good reputation back home in India. So I really thought, okay, you know what, when I come here, it'll be easy for me to find a job, because you put it up on your immigration website that you wanted my skill. So here I am, skills and ever ready to work, and I'm super excited to be here. So please have me. But then I kept applying and I kept applying, and I kept getting rejected. And I was very, very frustrated. And I think after the 6-month point, I started really questioning whether it made sense for me to even be here, or should I just go back, because it costs a lot of money to be here and to stay. No one has unlimited supply of money unless you're one of those billionaires, but I'm not. So
Mhm.
it was really, really sort of tricky for me. And I kept thinking, did I make a mistake coming here? And I think at the six month point, the turning point that came for me was I had a conversation with an aunt of mine who was here, and she was like, "Have you considered volunteering?" And I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." I mean, I was ready to do anything, because I think I'd reached a point where I was like literally pulling my hair, sitting at home, not doing anything, getting rejected again and again. Um, and I think the thing that I struggled with the most was I couldn't understand where my skills, because I do have varied skills. So I was really struggling to understand where would my skills fit into this new system, which I know nothing about. And I didn't have any family who actually worked within the social work or the human resources in that sense field. So this aunt of mine, she was like, you should volunteer. So I applied to Bethany to volunteer in one of their aged care facilities. And I'd never worked in aged care before. I mean, I had had no experience with it at all. I did take care of my elderly in-laws, but that was about it. I mean, it wasn't like in any professional sense. So I applied for it, and they interviewed me, and I got the post, and I went. I used to go and volunteer at Bethany Genef in Inaloo, and I loved it. I just fell in love. I was like, this is such amazing, meaningful work that I think for a moment, I almost forgot that I had all these fancy social work qualifications, because I was like, I really want to do this. I really, really enjoy this, and I want to do this. And so I spoke to the facility manager, and she was kind enough to direct me to HTA, which is, I think, Health Training Australia, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. And I did my Cert 3 in individual care over there. I trained in Bethany Genef itself, because I had a good rapport with the residents there. So they were like, "Oh, we'll take you on, come along." So I finished my training. I got my certificate. I continued working as a care worker in Bethany itself, at Bethany Genef. And it was the most amazing 3 years of my life. I am so grateful for that experience. It stretched me. I think care work is one of the most difficult work there is.
Yeah.
If you're doing it well, it is the most, I think it's just such a difficult job. And I got to meet so many people who've dedicated their lives to doing this job. And I had the privilege of caring for the most amazing people, and listening to their stories and being there with them through the process of aging, and supporting them through the process of end of life, and, just being there as, in any way to sort of help and support, because it is a difficult process for both the uh, the elderly person as well as their families. And it takes an amazing group of people to just bear witness to that.
Yes. So it was a great point for you to understand how you could use your skills and transfer these skills, and if you had to acquire new skills, because working in a different field, despite is a care,
Yes.
as you had with child care, when you had the trafficking or child abuse, and was very specific, all right? So coming to aged care, it's a different need that the
Yes.
people they are looking after, they need from you. Right. And then you got a mentor through the program that was from the community services,
Yes.
working in a more broad, let's say, services for the government.
Yes.
She could also, I believe, pass on what her perspective about
Yes.
community
Yes.
services
So
and
she put things in, she located me within the system. She helped me find, like, where could, with all these skills, where all could I go? She was literally the one who sort of sat me down and said, okay, this is the system, this is how it works, and these are the kind of things that you can do. But then I had already committed to the aged care thing, and I was really enjoying it, so I kind of stuck there for a period. And it was great. It was, like, knowing the options that I had, knowing the opportunities that were available to me was such a relief, because it was like, okay, I know there are options, there are things that I can do, then there are ways in which I can fit into, and that there is a space for me. I just didn't know how to sort of navigate the maze and get to that space. So for me, I think what my mentor did for me was really to um, show me the way. She literally laid out the breadcrumbs and said, follow this path, and this is how you can navigate it. And I
Yeah.
think even with you, Sema, I mean, all the information that you gave me to kind of understand what the job seeking process is. In India, we don't have anything called selection criteria, and I hope we never have something called selection criteria. I hate them, but over here it's such a thing. You have to write selection criteria. So I had no clue how to do it, and I don't think I'm still very good at it, but
Yeah. And is the question of also looking at your career more strategically, right? Than just, I need a job to pay the
yes.
bills, because that's what comes as it's urgent for newcomers at a point that they
When
need.
you come initially, it is that you need a job, because you have only so much savings, and you don't want to deplete them completely. And I was quite resistant to taking Centrelink and stuff like that. So I was like, I have to earn this money, and sort of be able to get on my own 2 feet and be able to manage. So that was, like, in the beginning, you just do anything and everything that you can. I was just lucky that what I chose to do was also something that I really enjoyed. And it's just viscerally changed me as a person. I'm just and the beautiful thing about that experience was that's where I found my community. That's where I made my friends. And because of, I think, the nature of the work that we do, and just how difficult it is, just how high stress it is, you build these really strong bonds. So I met these amazing people, made fantastic friends. And I think a vast chunk of my current friends are all people who I met at my first workplace.
Oh, that's so nice. It's like going to high school, right? When you meet your friends at level that you remember them forever. And
Yes.
it's as well. So
I think if you walk through the trenches of hell, you become good friends.
yeah, for sure. You remember each other and said, we are there together.
We fought the good fight.
That's right. So Arunima, and you were working in aged care and you said you spent 3 years there. What was your next step and where are you at now?
So my next step was I think I reached a point where I started realizing that there was more that I could do. I think all my old skills were like scampering at the back of my head, like, hey, we're also there. You need to do something about us. So at one point I was like, and being a care worker, as much as I love it, I don't think it was physically sustainable for me after a point. It's very physical work, and that makes I started developing aches and pains, and I was like, okay, this is not a long-term solution. I can't grow old doing this. I need to figure out, what can I do next? And so that was the time when I came across an advertisement with another organization. They work with disability and they were looking for a therapy assistant. And the role that they had kind of described was more in keeping with what my skills were originally. And it allowed me to function at a slightly higher level, because care work is like ground zero. It's the first level of care that you're providing. Whereas this was a slightly more higher. It was assisting with developing behavior support plans, developing therapies that could assist the participants achieve their NDIS goals. It was implementing those therapies. It was NDIS reporting. So it was another completely new area, which I had worked with children with disability as part of my work in schools, but to completely shift, it was again a brand new area. But yes, my skills were transferable. So I was able to, even I think my care worker skills from aged care, I could transfer them on to this role, because as time went by, one of the things that I did do was I've taken up a training role within the organization, and I do train support workers, and to understand what their perspective is, because I've worked as a care worker. I understand what it is to be, you know, the first level of care, and what are your problems, and what you face. And I come with tremendous respect for anyone who's a support worker or a care worker, or for that matter, nurses.
Yes.
Huge amount of respect for them and the work that they do. So that experience has then fed into me doing my trainings, and so it all links up. I think somewhere or the other, everything that we learn can you can use it to like in a job, it comes up and you can do. I do the newsletter at my new place, and that's where the English literature skills come in handy.
Hey, look at that. We never waste our skills.
It's
We need
wasted.
them at some point in life, right? So that's what I tell people. And I get very sad when people come to Australia and someone tells them that what they have studied before, they cannot use it. And I get so frustrated because it's not true. It's not true. So you can use your skills, even your qualification. Some professions you don't need to have assessment for your qualifications. Others you need, but you can do also some other jobs that are related to your field that probably you don't need to do the assessment right now, but you can work. You can do, and it's amazing your journey because you got your transferable skills and used in different areas that you didn't have experience, and you are doing it and you are working and
I am working and I'm really enjoying it. I mean, this new area is, I'm learning so much every day. It's just it's fascinating. I like the fact that there is a connection, like through my life and through my career. There's been a connection, and that's always been working with people and working in communities and trying to kind of reach out and help. That's been like a consistent thing. That's been, I think it's an imperative in my life that I don't like doing. I find great satisfaction from work like that. But then how that moves from, working with children predominantly to then working with the elderly and now working with people with disability. It's fascinating, actually.
Yes. So, and going back to the migration point, you migrated with your family, right?
Yes, with my daughter.
My daughter. So your daughter came here, she was a teenager then, is that right?
She was going to turn 18 when she came here.
Yeah,
Not
still 18.
He's
Still
and
early teens, yeah.
it
So
was
how
the
was
end of the difficult era.
yeah, so that is the point. How was for her, in your perception, uh, this journey transitioning to a new country, to a new phase, to a new life?
I think for her, she definitely had her challenges too. My daughter is an introvert. She has few and select friends. She takes time making friends. She likes lonely pursuits. Like me, she loves reading, and she's so it for her. I think it was challenging to adjust again. I thought it would be easier for her because she's a young person and she goes to uni and you can make friends easily while you're at uni, but because she was such an introvert, it was challenging for her. But again, it's been 4 years now. She's got her friends and she goes out and I mean, it's a small group of friends, but they're all amazing young people, so she's having a good time. But it takes time. It takes time. I think no one really prepares you for the shock of moving to a new country and trying to assimilate into a new culture, because it's a shocking thing. It shocks your entire system. And I think at any age when you step into what is essentially an alien space for you, that assimilation takes time. Some people do it faster, some people do it slower. But I think it is a shock to everyone, that you're like, "Oh, okay, now I have to, completely sort of because I think the shock is that you're starting with zero, you have to prove yourself to every person that you meet, and you have to work really hard towards that. If you go in with an ego, then it becomes difficult. You can't go in saying, oh, I was someone really big in my country, so I
And
expect
who
to
are
be
you?
treated
And
that
what's
way. Like, no, they don't need to treat you that way.
I
Like,
don't
they don't
care.
know anything about you. So why they don't owe you any good treatment, or I mean, respect, yes, but they don't owe you that, they're going to take you from where you've started.
Yeah.
You are at ground zero and you have to start building up.
And even because was your choice to come, right? So your choice. Because it was your choice to come, like newcomers, even if you come as a refugee, it's a choice to come to this country and the desire to come here and make it happen. So there is something very curious about you that I would like to share with the audience. You are an amazing photographer. You're an amazing photographer.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do. I do. It is a hobby of mine. I do love taking photographs.
Where do you take all this inspiration? Because I went to your Instagram account and I was amazed with so many beautiful photos. I want to take them up for me, like make it like a portrait, like my house is so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The photography, I think I was in grade 5 when I started realizing that I was really interested in taking pictures. And I remember asking my father for a camera. And when I was in grade 6, he gifted me one. And it was one of those hot shot, really, you put you actually, it was you had to put the reel inside. You go click. That just goes to show how old I am, Cema.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was so expensive. You just got 36 photographs and you didn't know how they turned out, and then you had to get them developed. So it was a sporadic thing to start off with. But then, when we got digital cameras, it just became, I just enjoyed it so much. I just enjoy um capturing like moments and things that I find meaningful, that I would like, that I find beautiful. And I think you find beauty in the most sort of oblique places. If you look for it, you'll find it. So, and I'm a huge nature lover. So, and Australia is, I mean, it's
Amazing photos of nature that you have on your Instagram. I was like, my goodness.
so yeah. So I think I've been photographing for definitely more than 20 years. But with I think my digital photography and like with a proper camera, it would be around, I think, 15 years of taking photographs. Yeah. And now you have the phones, which are so good. You don't even need to carry a big clunky camera. I mean, you can
That's
just use your phone and take fantastic photographs.
And you
So
come from a country that is full of colors, very vibrant colors, right? So capturing that as well in nature, it's amazing. It's amazing. So
thank you. It's
tell us,
something that gives me a lot of joy. So I just tremendously enjoy it, and I love taking pictures of people also. Uh, it's more difficult here to take pictures of people, whereas in India it was quite easy. And people, so people will volunteer to come and model for you and stuff. And I don't do any of this in a monetary sense, purely for the love of it. So yeah, I just hope that I reach a point here where I can, experiment with that. The other day I got to take portraits for see, again, like I said, skills, how they tie in, I took professional portraits for everybody at the office because we needed it for our website and for the newsletter. And I think you might have seen a couple of them that I took, and I put that up on my Instagram.
so
So
you
oh,
could be a photographer. You could make money with
I could. It's just,
not a
um,
job. It's a hobby.
yes, I don't like to monetize it because I just feel, then it becomes transactional. And here, this is just for me and for my joy and happiness, which it is where it is at the moment, but can't say, let's see.
And I remember you talking while you were talking about your father giving a camera. When I was doing my PhD, we had conversations. I think it was every week we had a conversation about some qualitative studies to see what was possible to use from the methodology that other studies were doing in our research. And one of them was a study where the participants got a camera to
Okay.
photograph everything around them that mean something about the research, so that they want to know. So they gave it a theme to the research, said, here's the camera. Every time when you see something that relates to this in your own eyes, take a picture. So, and then was to show the how people perceive the same thing that we are talking about in different ways, right? Let's say a microphone. Well, I see a microphone as this way, big, small. I can see a branch from a tree that looks like a microphone, right? So it was beautiful to see how people perceive things in different ways. And it was amazing. I said, oh, I would love to be part of a research like this. They give me a camera and they'll be photographing everything, because I have very different perceptions sometimes from what people think about the normal things, And
There's this thing called participatory media. And the whole concept is that when we take photographs or when we record on film or when we write articles, you're writing from a position of privilege. You're writing, and the power of the narrative kind of rests in your hands. So you define how a person is going to look, or how a person is, the pose, the angle from which you shoot, the nuance that you're going to give that story. So everything is decided by somebody else. And the person who's being photographed or filmed or documented is really just a passive subject. And participatory media basically talks about giving the narrative to them. So you give them the camera, you give them, the ability to tell their own story in their own words. And you basically are a facilitator. It's a more time consuming process, but in terms of I think the way it turns out, it's more equitable in its distribution of power in these kind of situations. When I was a student in my final year, one of the projects that I did was on participatory media. And I remember going to an illegal slum community outside of Bombay. It was on a hill. And there was this group of women there, and I took the camera to them in the community, and I actually taught them how to use the camera. So the basics of, just the functionality of the camera, as well as, the principles of how to frame and, light, shadow, just the basics. We did like very, very simply. I spent around 2 weeks working with them on just understanding and taking random photographs. And then what I did was we discussed what story they wanted to tell. And they were part of a microfinance group, which was called Sashakt, which basically means self-empowered. And they decided as a group that they wanted to tell the story of self-empowerment, because these were women who basically came from very impoverished rural communities from other states, and they were very protected, and they really didn't see much of the city or anything. They just lived on that little hill. I mean, it was not a little hill, a big hill of theirs, and it was a life that was there was no running water, there were no toilets. It was a very, very it was a challenging life that they led, and for them this the money that they would make, and it was a very small amount. I remember it was like, I don't know. It was minimal. I think it was like 5 rupees a day or something like that. Very small amount of money. But they would put it all together, and then they would give each other loans. So every week they would put a certain amount of money together, and they would sort of accumulate this money. And then if someone needed it, then they would give it they would give them loans at a lower interest rate, like a really minimal interest rate, so that they don't fall into the clutches of loan sharks.
Yes.
Because if you got into a clutch of loan shark, their interest is sky high, then you're forever in debt. They own you, they own your partner, they own your child. It's like everyone is, and it's very difficult to get out of that debt trap that they fall into. So it was amazing. And, like they'd helped one woman get her daughter married, another woman needed medical treatment, and a third one wanted to put her son into college. So, the money was going into these kind of things. And then I remember they took the photographs, and it was amazing. The result of that, and what eventually ended up happening, there was this really young girl. She was 18, and her husband came home, and he saw her. She was very excited about taking the photographs. So she was getting dressed to come out and join the group. And he got angry, and he beat her up. And he beat her up. She was bleeding from her mouth, and she had black eye, and she was an 18-year-old girl, and she was already a mother of 2 kids. And I remember walking in, and I felt so guilty, because I was like, oh my God, it's because I wanted to do this project that, this has happened. And the women just kind of pushed me aside. They all went in, they sat around her, and they were like, listen. And they just they just held her, and they let her cry, and they let her have that whole, they vented their anger, they cursed out the husband, and they all shared stories of how their husbands beat them up too, and that it's so unfair. Then they told her, you are going to come, and you're going to take this picture, and we want to take a picture of you. So they dressed her up, they put her in bright red lipstick, and then they took her out, and they took a picture of her and said, this is self-empowerment.
Oh my goodness.
To face the life that we lead with all the challenges that we face, where our own partners are so abusive, and to live in the poverty that we do, and still to have hope.
And find the joy.
And to find joy, and to find strength in the face of really, really sort of steep adversities and steep challenges. That was, and what you told me about your research just sort of brought back that memory for me of that experience. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
How much we
I'd love to work with participatory media.
That's so nice, right? And how we can empower people. And we don't know what's behind the scenes, right? Until things come to the surface. And helping people to face the reality, help also them to find other ways they can see themselves, not just as a
Yeah.
victim, but having people that
I,
support
I
them
think I think you can't really, at least my experience has been that you can't really help anybody. Everyone helps
as they want to
themselves.
be helped. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. I think what you can do is facilitate.
That's right.
You know, my issue with the word help is that that means I am in some sort of a superior position where I can help you. I'm also very much struggling to make sense of this life. You know, so all I can do is be there and kind of give um, an idea as to these things could be possible, and then people should then sort of empower themselves.
Decision, their own decision.
Yeah, I think everyone has to empower themselves. No one can really help us. People can stand by our side, but the journey that we walk is a solitary.
And also, we need to be ready to make the change, and no one can
Yes.
do for us,
Yes. Which
right?
which is then comes to the whole thing of, people, if people don't want to change, you can pour all your help into that person and into that situation, and it's not going to help. So just recognizing why a person's act, and that's why I say be a facilitator, because then people have to do the work of change themselves.
That's
And
right.
when they are ready and they want to make the change, then you are there as a facilitator to say, okay, this is a possible direction that you can go in.
That's the
This is
tools that you can use.
very much like what you all did for me when I first came here. You all facilitated my acclimatization to this space.
Yes. So is that how I see myself also? My help with people is the help that I gave to myself, the chance
Yes.
that I gave to myself, the point when I found in my lowest position that I had no strength to leave that space. But the strength had to come from inside me, right? So
Yes.
I could not, like, people motivating you, yes, but you are motivated for minutes,
Yes.
hours, and then
Yes.
you face again the dark moment or the dark space, and then you go even
Very true.
lower.
Very true. 100%. I agree with you. At the end of the day, everything comes from within us.
Yes.
You can have the best people supporting you, but if you do not believe within yourself, you do
That is,
not think you're worthy, you do not think you deserve better or that you can do better, then um,
and yeah, and I also say to people, the question is, I'm not feeling sorry for you because it's the last thing that you want me to feel sorry for you. I want to believe that it's possible to do, and if you
yes.
believe that it's possible to
And
do,
that's such a powerful message, isn't it? Just when you feel sorry for someone, again, there's that whole power dynamic. Oh, I'm better and I'm feeling sorry for you because you're
sorry
so
for you, right?
you
And
know
then it becomes a
I think I
victim.
think after you live for some time, you realize I'm equally pathetic.
Yeah, and I tell you, that's
When
why.
I'm facing my dark times, I'm absolutely like a helpless little baby. I just curl up into a ball and I'm like, when your insecurities eat you or your doubts come to get you, there's there's nowhere to run. You just,
And I
crumble.
tell you, for me to leave that horrible space that I was in, no one that came feeling sorry for me helped me. Or
Yes.
well, the ones that helped me was the one that gave me the most hardest questions that made
Yes.
me think about and
Yes.
and also evaluate the situation. And because I had the power, but I didn't know how to use it.
Yes.
And then the moment
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. The power is everything is within us. This
yeah,
is this has been my life lesson. There was a time in my life where I was like, oh, someone should come and rescue me. Someone should come and help me. Someone should do something about the problems that I am facing. No, they're my problems. And I need to, of course, I want to qualify over here that there are some problems which are systemic.
oh
And
yeah,
for that, we need help you
yeah.
know so if you're talking about poverty, or if you're talking about race injustice, or you're talking about gender injustice, these things are systemic and it cannot be rectified with one person thinking I believe and therefore I can change. They're systemic, and therefore everyone needs to work towards it, and especially governments and policymakers and people with that kind of influence. They need to make systemic changes so that the society we live in becomes more equitable and just. But I think there is also the internal journey, and that internal journey is powered by ourselves. No one else can power that journey for us.
That's right. That's completely right, Arunima. So now that we talked about photography and everything that we have the power to change, would you share your Instagram account so people can see your marvelous photographies?
It's another mouthful. Everyone's told me to change its name, but I love the meaning of it. So I don't want to change it. My Instagram account is Kannmashi_photography. So it's KANNMASHI_photography.
I can put the link there on when this video come out, so people will be able to visit you and like you.
Oh, that'd be lovely. That'd be lovely. I do love sharing my photographs. But the reason why I don't change the name is because in Kannmashi is actually a word for like coal, like black, the black coal that you put in your eyes, in Malayalam, which is my mother tongue. And but if you literally translate the word, it means kan means eye, and mashi means ink. So it's the ink from the eyes. So it's the stories I tell with what I see
from your perception.
From my own eyes. And that's why I love the word. And I'm like, I'm not changing it. This is what it is.
And it's unique. It's yours.
Yes. And it reminds me of home, and it reminds me where I came from. And I have very strong roots. I'm very proud of my culture. So why let it go?
So Arunima, now your piece of advice for someone who is here in Australia, a newcomer, who could not get their feet on this land, feeling that they belong, they are contributing, they're still in that journey of pain and frustration and disbelief. What piece of advice you give to this newcomer here living in Australia in this situation?
Take small steps. Take small steps. Sometimes when you think of what the end goal is, the distance seems really far. It can get very overwhelming, and the disbelief becomes very intense, and you feel you can never reach there. Whereas I always, at least for me, what I did was I was like, what is the next step that I can possibly do, which can take me from where I am to the next spot? That may not be getting the job that I think I should be doing. That may be like, for when I was not getting any jobs and I was just like floundering around, I needed one step into some sort of a work environment so that I could understand for myself what it is like to work in Australia, to meet people, to kind of get a sense of the place and the culture that I've moved into. And so I volunteered. That wasn't my end goal. The next thing was, okay, how can I take this thing that I'm really enjoying and maybe I can make some money out of it? So then get a qualification. That qualification is way below what I'm actually qualified to do.
Yes.
And I took I think 15 steps back. Just, when I told people back at work, like my mentor back at work was like, why are you doing that? And I was like, I love doing it. But she's like, that's not what you're qualified to do. I said, no, but I need to start somewhere.
Yes.
And don't have that ego that, oh, I have come in with an engineering degree or a master's degree, and therefore I should work at that level of, because we are still we're carving out our niche, and it's a little harder for us because we're coming in to an already established system. So that carving out that niche is difficult. So it's like one chisel at a time, but you need to keep chiseling, and it'll happen eventually. And one moment you will look back and you'll be like, oh my God, I've come so far. And for me currently, that's the experience of every day is that experience where I look back at when I started in 2019 and I'm like, I've come so far. I mean, so much has happened and so much good has come of this journey. It's not been an easy journey. It's been very painful. There have been many nights I cried to, and I was like, I just want to go back home. I don't want to stay here. But
What I've done with my life.
what are these choices that have led me to this point? But I think I'm so grateful I stuck it out. And I'm just really grateful for the people who came into my life, who kind of scaffolded me and helped me stick it out. All my friends here, the places I've worked, the people who've, just been there, just opened their hearts and their homes and created a space for me. I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, wonderful. And what piece of advice would you give to someone outside of Australia, wishing to come to Australia, but not knowing yet if it would be possible to live in here? So what kind of advice would you give to someone? Because probably there are many people that ask you, hey, how is life in Australia? I would like to go to Australia. And yesterday I met one of past mentees as well. He said, oh, I have told 2 people, don't come to Australia if you want to this, and you are old enough, you cannot get your permanent visa, so don't come. So what would you just say to someone who is qualified and want to move to Australia?
I would say come to Australia. It's a fantastic place. I love it here. So yes, please, by all means, come. But don't come in expecting that you've left something, a standard of life you left in wherever your country of origin is, and that you're going to come here and you're going to step into that same space. You're going to have to struggle. It's going to be difficult. You're going to question your sanity as to why you decided to come here. But if you stick it out, Australia really pays amazing dividends. I am very, very lucky to be here.
Ah, well done. So thank you very much, Arunima, for coming and sharing your journey with us today.
Thank
And
you.
it was a big pleasure having this chat with you and getting to know more about your journey and your hobbies and all your great knowledge that you have, and especially your big heart helping the community, helping others with your skills. So well done. And thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So this is the end of the episode 6, and see you next time. Bye-bye.